Hello pals and welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be talking about my Jane Austen July TBR and my reading plans. I've always read along with Jane Austen July and this will be my first year on YouTube doing it, which I'm really excited about. I should mention that I am also cracking along with my summer reading plans, which I posted about a month ago. So this TBR is a little bit of a strain because I do have a fair few books I want to get to in July as well. I have had 2 weeks off. I've been on holiday in Spain. I had a lovely time, but I cannot wait to kind of get back to filming. I have a huge cup of tea. You might want a cup of tea or coffee too, and we'll go ahead and get started. Right, let's crack on, shall we? Jane Austen July. I'm sure if you're watching this you already know, but it's just a month-long themed Jane Austen read-along. Created and kind of organised by some booktubers that I really like. There are 7 prompts. I have them on my phone and I also have them written down if you see me looking down as well. Challenge 1 is to read one of Jane Austen's main 6 novels. Now, because it's Jane Austen anniversary year, her 250th, at the beginning of the year I decided to read all the 6 novels across the course of this year. In January I read Pride and Prejudice, had a cracking time. I listened to the audiobook, the Rosamund Pike version, which I adore and listen to every January as a tradition. In February I read Persuasion, which again I adored and has kind of risen in my estimations. In April I read Sense and Sensibility, and what I've chosen for this Jane Austen July is Emma. Last summer, I listened to an amazing audiobook rendition of Emma by Fiona Stafford. That is the Penguin Black Classics audiobook version. I always love those editions because generally the narration is fantastic. Emma is one of my favourite Jane Austen novels, and I think I've come to a point where I definitely agree that it is the most technically accomplished of all of her novels. I'm just more sentimentally attached to Pride and Prejudice. But last year when I listened to the audiobook of this, I had such a fantastic time. It is a slightly longer Austen novel, but I love Highbury in Emma. I love Mr. Woodhouse. Mr. Knightley is one of my favourite kind of Austen heroes. I love the character of Emma because she is a little bit like dislikable. So yeah, I'm really excited to get to this. It is fresh in my mind because I did reread it last year, but that's generally not a problem for me. The Emma adaptations are some of the best out there. There's a 2020 film which I really love. There's a Kate Beckinsale miniseries from, is it from the 90s, that one? There's a BBC miniseries with Johnny Lee Miller. There's Clueless. I really love this novel. I love all of its adaptations. So that is my choice for the main 6 novels. Prompt 2 is to read something by Jane Austen that is not one of her main 6 novels, and for this I've chosen a personal favourite, which is Lady Susan, which is a really short kind of epistolary novella by her. I have it in this edition of Love and Friendship, but what I think I'm going to do is read it from this. This is an edition of Whit Stillman's Love and Friendship, and this was released to tie into the film Love and Friendship, which is an adaptation of Lady Susan. I can't remember the year when that came out. I think it'll be like 2017-ish. I'm a big fan of Lady Susan. It is like satirical and mischievous and witty. The adaptation by Whit Stillman I absolutely adore. I think on a par with the 1995 Pride and Prejudice, it's one of my favourite adaptations and one of the only ones that kind of captures the essence of Jane Austen for me. In the first half of this, by Whit Stillman, you have his retelling of Lady Susan titled Love and Friendship, which does get a little bit confusing. And in the second half, you have the original text of Lady Susan, but annotated by him. So I think for prompt 2, what I'm going to do is read the original text of Lady Susan with his annotations, and we'll come back to this in prompt 4. Of all of Jane Austen's earlier writings, Lady Susan is probably my favourite, and I haven't revisited it in quite a while, so I think that's what we'll do for prompt 2. Challenge 3 is to read a work of non-fiction about Jane Austen, and I wanted to quickly mention a book that I read in May that overall I found really enjoyable and has inspired me to go back to a lot of contemporary authors of Jane Austen, and that is Rebecca Romney's Jane Austen's Bookshelf. I had a few little issues of this, but overall this has given me so much inspiration, a kind of little bit of a nudge to kind of crack on with some writers that I have on my shelves, more of which we'll hear about later. But this I would recommend for this. But what I'm going to head to is Jane Austen and George Eliot, The Lady and the Radical by Edward Whitley. These are two of my favourite novelists, and I think it's fair to say two women who are quite different in terms of their works and their lives. I know from the Rebecca Romney book that George Eliot's partner, George Henry Lewis, was a big champion of Jane Austen in the 19th century and really helped kind of like establish her reputation. But my understanding is that George Eliot herself was quite lukewarm on Jane Austen, but I'm really excited to go into this. I'm planning to head to some more George Eliot over summer, and I know that this will be really good preparation for that. I also have my eyes on a book I don't currently own, which is Living with Jane Austen by Janet Todd. This is that mix of personal memoir and literary biography that when it works, it really works, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. This is inspired by the author's reading Jane Austen over the course of her life over kind of 50 years. I'm really fascinated by the subject of how books, and especially classics, grow with people over time, which is kind of what this is focused on. If I get through this and I have some time, I will try and head to that, but I don't want to kind of overload my TBR, so we'll see. But this one, The Lady and the Radical, Jane Austen and George Eliot, I'm really excited to get to. Challenge 4 is to read a retelling of a Jane Austen work or read a work of historical fiction set in Jane Austen's time. For this, what I'm going to do is head back to this Whit Stillman Love and Friendship, because like I said, the first half of this is his retelling of Lady Susan. Because I'm going to be reading the original text, I know that I'll want to read his kind of retelling of it, and then I think I'll also head to the adaptation, the film adaptation of Love and Friendship, which I absolutely adore. And this will also help me because I do have that rather ambitious summer reading list to get through. I've read this before, I know that I adore him. Challenge 5 is to read a book by a contemporary of Jane Austen, and I have two possibilities of this which I haven't quite decided on. Recently, I picked up a copy of A Vindication of the Rights of Woman by Mary Wollstonecraft in my local Waterstones. This is the kind of one of the foundation kind of philosophical feminist texts. I can't believe I've never read this, and I really want to. I'm fascinated by Mary Wollstonecraft and the whole kind of Wollstonecraft Shelley family. There's an audiobook version of this read by Jeanette Winterson, which I'm really tempted to get, even though I just bought this physical copy. I think that this was published in 1792, so it kind of fits into the right time frame. And again, I think that Mary Wollstonecraft is really interesting in comparison to Jane Austen. After reading Jane Austen's bookshelf, I did go back to my classics bookshelves, which are right over here, and take a look at some of the books I have on there that she mentions that I haven't got to. And one of them was Maria Edgeworth's Belinda. I know that Jane Austen really loved this, and I've had this on my TBR for about 6-7 years. I've always wanted to read this, it's just kind of languished on there, so this might be the perfect time to get to this one. And also, this just sounds like so much fun. The reason why I've never headed to this is because the font, I don't know if you can see this, the font in this edition is absolutely tiny, so I might see if I can get an edition of this on my Kobo and read it from there instead. I would love to say I'll get to them both. I'm not sure if I'll have time for that. But yes, right now I'm kind of leaning towards Belinda, but we'll have to wait and see. Challenge 6 is to watch a direct screen adaptation of a Jane Austen novel. I can do this no problem. My plans currently are the 2020 adaptation of Emma, which I think there's a watch along for. And also, what I'll try to do is watch Love and Friendship as well. Yeah, I will do that no problem. Challenge 7 is to watch a modern screen adaptation retelling of a Jane Austen novel, and I'm going to slightly adapt this one for myself because I haven't yet watched Miss Austen, the BBC adaptation of the Jill Hornby novel, which I really want to watch, which I've kind of saved for this month. So that that doesn't really fit in anywhere, so I'm going to kind of sneakily fit it in here and just make this one work for me. I could also watch Clueless, which fits into the Emma theme, but I really want to get to this one, so that's what I'm going to do. Right, that is everything. Lots of reading planned for July, and I will be back very soon with my June reading wrap up. I've had an interesting reading month in June, and so I can't wait to talk about all of the books that I have. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear your comments if you've read any of these, or kind of what your plans are for reading Jane Austen during this month or throughout the entire year, because I will be cracking on with Jane Austen throughout this whole year. I hope that you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and I will see you all soon in a new video.